Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Alberta government announced a new initiative to help seniors with much-needed mental health support. Political reporter Brian Lilly stops by with an update on if the Trudeau Liberals are considering help for Canadians in the form of a gas tax break. And Whoop Up Days is set to return to Lethbridge in August. BCN's Micah Quinn will have the details as to what you can expect.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Alberta government announced that it is partnering with more community groups to offer better access to mental health support for seniors. Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions Mike Ellis says more than $6.3 million has been committed to support 4 major groups to help older Albertans. That includes $3.2 million for the Calgary United Way's Health Aging Alberta Initiative, $1.5 million to the Imagine Institute for Learning, and $650,000 to the Alberta Elder Abuse Awareness Council.
We know the last few years have been very hard. For many seniors, the pandemic has meant isolation and a loss of community, which of course is not good for mental health. We're so proud to partner with and support organizations like CARIA, the United Way of Calgary and area, and others who are doing such a fantastic job to support seniors. These supports will go a long way to improve the mental health and well-being of older Albertans. And this is yet another step forward in building a comprehensive recovery-oriented system of care that helps everyone get the support they need when they need it.
Minister Ellis says with the community-based partnerships, they should better help meet the mental health needs of Alberta seniors. With inflation at an all-time high, life is getting to be quite costly for Canadians, especially when we pull up to the pumps. I asked political reporter Brian Lilly what is causing the price of fuel to increase by so much. I mean, the average price in Canada is now over $2 a litre. Brian says the cause is much more than the war between Ukraine and Russia.
Absolutely, that plays a part, and that's why gas is up everywhere around the world. But is that the only thing going on? No. A big chunk of this is our own doing, Hal. We have passed policies and elected leaders who fundamentally believe that the price of fuel should be higher. Why? To stop us from driving, to stop us from flying. You know, not them, just us. So I looked at the cost differential between different parts of Canada and its nearby American neighboring city. So to give you an example, after converting into liters and Canadian funds, in Buffalo yesterday, it was $1.51 a litre. On the Canadian side, $2.09 a litre.
Brian Lilly will also discuss who the winner was when it came to selling party memberships during the CPC leadership race. He'll have details coming up in the second half of our program. Interim Conservative leader Candice Bergen says the Liberals need to end COVID-19 restrictions once and for all. She says that will allow our economy to reopen and make life much more affordable for Canadians.
Tourism, federal employees, small businesses, families, all are suffering. They're all pawns in the Prime Minister's COVID game. Isn't it true the Prime Minister knows he needs to lift these restrictions, but he would rather do COVID theater than do what's right?
We absolutely understand that affordability matters for Canadians, and that's why we are taking action by increasing the Canada Workers' Benefit. This year, a family of 3 is getting $2,300 more by increasing the OAS for seniors 75 and over by 10% this year, Mr. Speaker, and with a $500 top-up, Mr. Speaker, for people facing housing affordability challenges.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau sat down with the President of Chile to discuss responsible mining practices. Chilean President Gabriel Boric says his government wants Canadian mining companies to act more responsibly. Trudeau agreed and says Canadian companies need to do more to protect the environment.
That we want to demand Canadian companies to behave as is in Chile as if they were in Canada. Because there's no reason that can justify that in some countries you behave in some way you wouldn't do in your own country.
It has been a long challenge and a long-standing objective of Canadian governments and Canadian mining industry to make sure that they follow the same kinds of values and principles that they do as Canadians in Canada overseas as well. And the vast majority of Canadian mining companies are responsible. There are some that are not, and we have to be tougher against them.
A Calgary pastor who protested at the Coots border earlier this year is headed to trial next year. Pastor Arthur Pawlowski will stand trial February 2nd and 3rd, almost a year after he was charged with breaching a release order to keep the peace and committing mischief by inciting others to block the lawful use of public property. He's also charged with destroying essential infrastructure. Pawlowski pleaded not guilty to the charges on May the 6th. Pawlowski was arrested on February 8th, days after he attended the protest in Coots. That's when he gave a speech and is heard in a video telling people not to give up the fight against the government mandates. 16 high school students in Lethbridge got an up-close and personal look at the life of a police officer and what it really means to carry a badge as a full-time job. As Angela Stewart tells us now, the LPS hopes through tours and initiatives like this one, most of the students will look into policing programs upon graduation.
We can use those as we go through, and part of it is
high school students from around Lethbridge had a chance to learn all about the duties of a police officer during the Youth Police Academy program.
All the youth engagement officers are assigned a portfolio of schools and community partners to do with anything to do with youth.
Each year, the LPS will work with administrators at different high schools and pull students who've expressed interest in policing and bring them out for an up-close and personal look at what the profession entails.
Another big part is just using it as a recruiting tool as well, too. Because they are coming to the age where they can decide for post-secondary purposes if policing is something that they're going to be interested in.
This batch of 16 students also had the opportunity to hear from different policing units, including the tactical team and explosive disposal unit.
we see a bad guy, let's say he's up in the bedroom and he has a gun or something like that, we can push a button on here.
Integrity and helping the community.
Ever since he was a kid, grade 11 student Tayshawn Small Eyes says he's had a dream of working in the police force. And once he's old enough, there will be no hesitation to apply to work for the LPS.
I want to get involved with the community here and kind of just help the native population and, of course, everybody else, but just help whatever's going on here.
As for grade 10 student Reese Lands, her interest is in forensics, and by attending this program, it gave her a better outlook at what her future career would look like.
You usually just see it on TV and all the shows, and I thought it was really cool, and I wanted to see what it was like to do it in real life and not in a movie, not actually doing it.
Constable Alistair Coop and recruiter with LPS says he took part in a similar program in Lacombe, and he hopes some of the students will consider a career in policing after attending this program.
As the journey is important, the passion for this job that has continued even after 16 years is what I hope that these kids can see, that this job is really meaningful over the long term.
For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
The issue of paid parking at the NBAC Centre has been a hot-button issue lately. City Council voted in April to move forward with a $5 paid parking idea at the event centre starting in September. Lethbridge Councillor John Middleton Hope filed a motion to City Council asking them to rescind paid parking at the event centre, citing a lack of community engagement prior to the decision being made. He said he's also received a number of complaints from residents during the implementation of the decision. But the motion, however, was shot down by a 5-4 vote in Council. Some of the councillors explained their reasoning behind their decisions.
Simple math says that if you grab your friend's minivan and say, I'll pick up 9 of you, it's 55 cents each. So I think there are various ways to avoid paying this if people so choose.
But I must stress that I believe there are conditions, in particular expenses, that have not been clearly articulated, which in turn has adversely affected Council's decisions.
So paid parking will be a go starting September at the NMAC Centre. Now, if you live in our city here in Lethbridge, you'll soon have a safe way to dispose of hazardous waste materials, including batteries and paint. Lethbridge City Council voted unanimously to implement a pilot program for toxic roundups. Officials say the waste and recycling utility pilot will offer 3 roundup events with no increase to utility rates. Recent studies suggest that up to 3% or 600 tons of black cart materials that are considered HHW and e-waste materials could be diverted. Officials say the administration will report back to Council following the results of the 1-year pilot program. Whoop Up Days is set to return on August the 23rd for more family fun and entertainment. The Lethbridge and District Exhibition made the announcement on Tuesday morning. Video journalist Micah Quinn has more on the special event that will be restriction-free this time around.
We're excited to welcome a nearly full event and a reimagined event as we look towards the future of this event and the next 125 years of its history in this community.
Whoop Up Days is coming back for another fun-filled year. The event coincides with the 125th anniversary of the Lethbridge and District Exhibition. Mike Morganton, the organization's chief executive officer, says the Pro Rodeo will also be making its way back to our city.
We are going to be on the Pro Circuit Tour, and we will really have one of the greater opportunities late in the season to accumulate points to both those championship rodeos here in Lethbridge. So it's incredibly important for the sport, but also incredibly important for us as an organization to reintroduce professional rodeo.
Rides for Whoop Up Days will be provided by West Coast Amusements, and the Midway will be set up once again in our city. There will also be some new attractions coming up this year.
One of our pavilions will turn into La Galleria, which is a celebration really of the local arts community. So very similar. We want to ensure that Whoop Up Days really is a spectacle for everyone to have something for. We're also introducing some indoor beach programming at the YQL Beach, which will be a full-on beach party, tiki bar, you name it, in one of our halls. And then there'll be a saloon activation here in Heritage Hall.
Whoop Up Days will run from August 23rd to the 27th, and the Pro Rodeo will begin on August 25th and run until the 27th. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Calgary Council members were decked out in orange and blue at a recent council meeting after the Flames bowed out to the Edmonton Oilers in the Battle of Alberta. Mayor Jody Gondek joined councillors in wearing Edmonton Oilers jerseys to make good on a bet after the Flames lost out to the Oilers in 5 games in the second round of the playoffs. Gondek even took it a step further and had her face painted. Now, the Oilers, however, did not make it through the next round, losing in 4 straight to the Colorado Avalanche in the Western Conference Final. Oilers players, meanwhile, reflected on their 6-5 overtime loss to Colorado and being swept in 4 games. Edmonton held a 4-2 lead in the third period before the Avs came back.
Well, I'm proud of the group to get to this point, of course. I don't think anyone necessarily expected us to be here. With that being said, we expected to be here, and we want to be here, and we want to be even further, right? So I'm proud of the group, but obviously it's very disappointing and it sucks right now.
Every team kind of goes through it. They become a playoff team, and then they get there most years, and they go on a little bit of a run, and they learn that lesson, and then it becomes their time to win. You look at a Colorado team that's been in that situation many times, and obviously they're knocking on the door right now. So
yeah, obviously we lost. We're done. So momentum is it's a crazy thing in the playoffs, and it was no different tonight. We had the lead, and it seems like when we got the lead, they come at you in waves, and we couldn't withstand that, couldn't get some saves, couldn't get the bounces. And ultimately, they get another break at the end there and win the series.
And there's always next year. BC says it is introducing a 2-stage heat alert and response system to help people in communities stay safe this summer when the heat rises. Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth says the system aims to warn people about the dangers of heat events and to prevent a repeat of last summer's heat dome that resulted in close to 600 deaths.
We saw that in many cases it was in older apartment buildings that did not have air conditioning, for example. So the ability to work with local governments to identify those places, and then you can target specific messaging and supports to those areas. At the same time, the alerts will also be out in 2 stages. So there will be the alert, which will go out as we come into a period of 2 days where we're going to be in the specific regions of the province, the temperatures that will trigger a broadcast intrusive alert, and then there will be the alert itself.
The main highway between Winnipeg and the U.S. border has fully reopened for the first time in more than a month. Some sections of Highway 75 were closed in early May due to flooding. The water, however, has receded enough to let traffic get through again. The son of Ruth Whitfield, an 86-year-old woman killed when a gunman opened fire at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York, challenged Congress on Tuesday to act against the racism and the nation's epidemic of gun violence.
I ask every one of you to imagine the faces of your mothers as you look at mine, and ask yourself, is there nothing that we can do? Is there nothing that you personally are willing to do to stop the cancer of white supremacy and the domestic terrorism it inspires? Because if there is nothing, then, respectfully, senators, you should yield your positions of authority and influence to others that are willing to lead on this issue. My mother's life mattered. My mother's life mattered. And your actions here today will tell us how much it matters to you.
Police in southwestern Nigeria say the gunman who killed 50 people at a church opened fire both inside and outside of the building in a coordinated attack before escaping. So far, no one has claimed responsibility. Now, warning, this video contains some graphic images.
I didn't actually realize that the happening was in my parish, because I saw people running helter-skelter in the town and saying, they are coming, they are coming. So I was trying to look for the shortest cut to get back to the parish. It was in that instance that I saw two of my altar servers who stopped me and said, Father, stop, don't go to the parish. They are killing people in the parish. And I said, which people? They said they don't know. Hearing the gunshot, he saw the main door of the church being closed. People already, were agitated. In that agitation, he was still watching. I guess he was frozen. What is happening? Then he heard the explosion. And it was that explosion that woke him up to, it's like, there's trouble. And then he ran into the sacristy. Everybody in the church were all running towards the sacristy. And by that time, they had come in to gain entrance into the church and were shooting sporadically, and then also using the hand device, explosive.
Ukrainian authorities escorted journalists to the site of a Russian strike in Kiev. It's the first such attack in the city since the end of April.
The responsibility of Russians to use cruise missiles, very expensive, as you're totally right, to attack peaceful facility, to produce freight wagons, half wagons, and wagons for grain, to transport this grain to the European market. This facility is totally peaceful and everyone can come and see. Of course, if there is some conspiracy theory, maybe they will use next morning saying that Ukrainian took away tanks from this facility, but you can see it's impossible to do. There were no tanks, and you can just be witness of this.
With the war in Ukraine now into its fourth month, Great Commission Media Ministries is continuing to help support the evacuation of thousands of people trapped in the frontline towns and villages. The group is also delivering aid to those unable to leave the war zone.
Humanitarian aid arrived this morning. These people have received quite a load, with 2 semi-truck loads, 2 bus loads, and a few flatbed trucks full of aid for the front lines.
Твое мнение о помощи, которую получили сегодня утром?
Я просто в позитивном шоке от того, что вы делаете для Украины в это сумасшедшее время. Я не представляю, как бы мы выживали на фронте в прямом смысле этого слова, как бы мы выживали без вашей помощи. Ваши пожертвованные автомобили уже спасали нам жизни. Ваши гуманитарные грузы доходят туда, где вообще ничего нет. Я надеюсь, что мы сможем с вами доехать вместе до поселков на линию фронта, где люди сидят без света, воды, тепла, еды, магазинов уже 2 месяца почти. Огромное спасибо за все, что вы делаете. Это просто чудо для нас. Слава Україні!
So great to see that more and more Ukrainians are receiving much-needed help near the front lines. Colombia's Navy has released images of artifacts found scattered near a Spanish shipwreck laden with gold that sank to the bottom of the Caribbean more than 300 years ago. The discovery includes coins, cannons, and other historical artifacts. The San Jose ship sank following a battle with British ships. The 62-gun, 3-masted galleon is considered the holy grail of shipwrecks. And it's one incredible find. Well, we had a soggy Tuesday with lots of rain, which has been watering our lawns and replenishing our water supply. And how long will the rain clouds be around? Full weather details are coming up. The rain continued in many parts of southwestern Alberta today. Tonight, the rain cloud should clear out with a low near 6 degrees. Wednesday, we should see a mixture of sun and cloud and a high near 22. Thursday, lots of sunshine in the forecast with a high of 25. Friday's even warmer under a mainly clear sky with a high near 26. Not a bad weekend is shaping up so far. It should be partly cloudy on Saturday with a high of 26 degrees. More clouds move in on Sunday with a high of 20. Monday, the rain returns with a high of only 16. Now checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 21 degrees with an average low of 8. The record high was 33 degrees set back in 1996, and the record low was a chilly -1 in 1999. The sun rose at 5:25 and set at 9:35. Let's see how Wednesday is shaping up across the country now. Expect showers and a high of 18 degrees in Victoria. Light rain and 19 is on tap for Vancouver. Intermittent showers and 19 for Edmonton. Calgary may experience a thunderstorm with a high of 20. Just a few clouds and 23 degrees is on tap for Regina. Mainly sunny at 25 for Saskatoon. Partly cloudy and 23 degrees for Winnipeg on Wednesday. In the central part of the country, it'll be partly cloudy and 22 in Toronto. A slight chance of showers and 23 in Ottawa. Light showers and 22 degrees for Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, expect periods of rain and 19 in Fredericton. Overcast and 22 for Halifax. A slight chance of rain and 19 for Charlottetown. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, it should be mainly sunny with a high of 15 degrees on Wednesday. Inflation is stressing out a lot of Canadians, especially when buying groceries or filling up your vehicle with gas. A recent survey by FP Canada Financial says money was the biggest stressor for 38% of respondents. More than 2/3 say rising grocery prices are having a direct impact on their finance-related stress, and 1/3 says financial stress is leading to anxiety, depression, or mental health challenges. The World Bank says it has sharply downgraded its outlook for the global economy. It is pointing to the war in Ukraine, the prospect of widespread food shortages, and concerns about the potential return of stagflation. The 189-country anti-poverty agency predicts the world economy will only expand 2.9% this year. Now that is down from the 4.1% it forecasted in January and well below the growth of 5.7% last year. The agency is also predicting growth of only 3% for both 2023 and 2024. An investigation has been launched following 221 complaints that the fuel-saving stop-start system on a number of Honda Pilot SUVs does not work. The U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says the investigation covers around 195,000 vehicles from the 2016 to 2020 model years. Owners complain that the engine will not restart on its own from a complete stop at a traffic light or intersection. Some also said they needed a jump start to get their motor going again. An Australian court has ordered Google to pay a former politician $515,000 US over 2 defamatory YouTube videos. John Barilaro, a former New South Wales State Deputy Premier, had sued Google and comedian Jordan Shanks in federal court over the videos. Justice Stephen Rares found that Barilaro had been the subject of a relentless racist and an abusive campaign conducted on YouTube, which is owned by Google. Barilaro told reporters that he now feels vindicated by the judgment. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 109 points on the day to finish at 20,928. The Dow was up 264 points to 33,180. The S&P 500 was up 39 points to 4160, and the Nasdaq was up 113 on the day to 12,175. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.22 to $119.72 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 3 cents to $9.36 US. Gold was down 10 cents to $18.52.27 US an ounce, and silver was up a cent to $22.24 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $15.51 per bushel, barley's at $10.08, canola's at $25.17, and corn is at $11.94 per bushel. Live cattle were up 90 cents to $133.73, feeder cattle were up 48 cents to $172.45, and lean hogs were down 80 cents to 108.43. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 79.80 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Lethbridge City Council voted against a motion by Councillor John Middleton Hope to rescind paid parking at the NMAC Centre. A number of business owners around the arena and Lethbridge College students complained that they will have to soon pay for parking. Well, beginning in September, a $5 parking fee will be implemented, except for those who have season tickets for the Lethbridge Hurricanes. Candidates who are seeking the CPC leadership sold a record number of party memberships. Coming up, we have a chat with political reporter Brian Lilly, who will discuss who sold the most and who may have the clear line to victory for the party leadership. Well, it was less than 2 weeks ago that the House of Commons voted against a Conservative motion to drop COVID-19 travel restrictions, specifically for airports. In fact, they extended them. Now, to discuss this in more detail is political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, joining us once again from Toronto. Brian, a former NHL star is even blasting Toronto's airport as the worst in the world over these massive delays.
Yeah, Ryan Whitney, he's a former defenseman in the NHL, part of a popular hockey podcast called Spit and Chicklets, bit of a media personality, and he was going through Pearson on his way to Boston. And he just got delay after delay. It is, he was talking about going through American customs because like at most Canadian airports, you can pre-clear US customs. He gets through there, his bags are checked, he's through customs, flight gets canceled. Okay, well, I need to leave. Well, no, you need to go back through Canadian customs because you're now in the United States. Well, I haven't left the airport. Well, you got to go through Canadian customs. Due to the delays, he's there for hours. Just needs to get his bags because he says he can get a flight out of Buffalo, get to Boston on time. No. Anyways, problem after problem, delay after delay. This is something that's been going on for more than 2 months now, Hal, and maybe it'll finally catch the government's attention. Will they act? I don't know. Last time this was in the headlines, Omar Al-Gabra, the transportation minister, a smart guy who, I've covered him a long time. He's a smart guy. He should know better. He blamed travelers being slow because they forget how to take out their laptop to put them in the bin. That's not the problem here. And there are major issues that the government needs to fix, and they're just not doing it.
And you even pointed to a series of posts on Twitter by a former airline executive who says, hey, you don't blame the airlines, but this is more on the government. Will we see some action soon? Will Omar Al-Gabra take some action here?
I mean, he's got to. This has got to be his number one issue. And instead, the other day, he's tweeting out, hey, it's donut season. It's him, at Ribfest was on in Ottawa. And I know you remember that fondly because everyone that worked near Parliament Hill did. But he was at the Tiny Tim's Donuts truck that was there and snapping a photo of himself. Look, he's not going to be on this 24/7. He does have to eat at some point, but that was tone deaf. Because this didn't just start on the weekend. It didn't start with Ryan Whitney. It's been going on for 65 days. A gentleman named Duncan Dee, who is the former chief operating officer for Air Canada, put out for the whole world to see why the airlines aren't to blame. He said, you can't blame an airline for not being able to operate properly when you've got 65 plus delays going on, when you can't get your plane unloaded so that it can turn around because the customs hall is full. And so people are waiting for 2 hours on the tarmac after their plane lands because the customs hall is full. You can't get more people in it. And this isn't with extra social distancing for COVID. People are cheek to jowl and it's still packed. And so planes wait 2 hours, then they finally get off. Well, at that point, the aircraft has missed its maintenance, scheduled maintenance. So it may not be able to take off again until it gets that scheduled maintenance, which is now backed up. The flight crew, which was supposed to land, do a quick turnaround, and take off again with a new batch of passengers, they're going to time out because by law, by regulation, there's only so many hours that they can work in a day. And look, I'm fine with that as a passenger. I don't want to be on the plane with the pilot on his 22nd hour. He went through in detail how this is every problem that you hear about with the airlines and the front desk and the planes being canceled and the flights being rescheduled is due to the government's inability to deal with CATSA, the security at check-in, the customs when you're coming back in. All of these are government problems that they have known about for more than 2 months, continue to refuse to fix. And by the way, travel season, it picks up. In 3 weeks, kids are out of school. People are going to be going on summer vacation. I'm telling you, Hal, that I'm reconsidering a couple of trips. I was thinking of, do I go this place? Do I go that place? I'm not sure that I want to fly through Pearson right now, the busiest airport in Canada, the closest one to me.
Maybe the safest thing to do right now, the best thing to do is be a tourist in your own town. Forget about flying and maybe just drive everywhere. But now here's the challenge there with fuel at an all-time high. That's pretty expensive too right now, Brian. Gas is over $2 a litre in many regions of the country. Has there been any talk by the Trudeau Liberals of cancelling the carbon tax to give Canadians a break, or maybe even the federal gas tax, similar to what Premier Jason Kenney did here in Alberta with the provincial gas tax?
No, not at all. And in fact, they're bringing in what amounts to a second carbon tax in July. It's called the Clean Fuel Standard. And we've talked a bit about that before. That'll take effect in July during the busy summer driving season. That will push up the price yet again. Jason Kenney has already reduced Alberta's gas tax. I know that Ontario Premier Doug Ford passed legislation to reduce it. That doesn't come into effect until July 1st. That'll drop the price by 5.7 cents a litre in terms of taxes. Hopefully drivers get to see that difference. But people want to say this is all about the war in Ukraine. This is because of Russia invading Ukraine. This is the sanctions on the Russian oil and gas industry. Absolutely, that plays a part, and that's why gas is up everywhere around the world. But is that the only thing going on? No. A big chunk of this is our own doing, Hal. We have passed policies and elected leaders who fundamentally believe that the price of fuel should be higher. Why? To stop us from driving, to stop us from flying. Not them, just us. So I looked at the cost differential between different parts of Canada and its nearby American neighboring city. So to give you an example, after converting into liters and Canadian funds, in Buffalo yesterday, it was $1.51 a liter. On the Canadian side, $2.09 a liter. In Vancouver, it was $2.25 a liter. In Bellingham, Washington, it was about $1.68 a liter, I believe. Now, you guys in Alberta have the lowest prices in the country, $1.76, $1.77 area in Calgary and Edmonton. Well, drive down south of the border, go to Great Falls, Montana. It's about $1.55, so it's still cheaper. You guys are cheaper for several reasons, including normally lower taxes, but you've also recently cut. Ours are higher. The anger that I've received online, the emails that I've received, vile emails from Trudeau supporters who believe that don't you dare say that he has anything to do with this is unbelievable, Hal. People don't want to believe that our policies have anything to do with it, but we have, yes, the war in Russia's having, and the sanctions, that's driving up the price globally. We're pushing it up ourselves. And think about this. Remember, we used to complain about the tax on the tax because we'd have the gas tax, then we charge GST on top of it. Now we have the tax on the tax and the tax because we have the excise tax. Now we have the carbon tax, then we charge the GST on both of them. And it's almost what the government's taking in GST is almost double what it was just over a year ago.
Yeah, some people may say we may be a little overtaxed here in Canada. Brian, membership sales with the federal Conservatives were cut off with 3 of 6 campaigns claiming that they had the winning formula. Pierre Poilievre's camp said they sold more than 300,000 memberships. Now that seems like a lot here. While Jean Charest and Patrick Brown's camp say they have the road to victory. So let me ask you, who will end up receiving the most votes?
We don't know. And it's, the way the system works is it's not the most votes, it's the most points. The real winner in all of this, by the way, is the Conservative Party of Canada, because they get that $15 from every member that signed up. And we're talking about 500,000 odd members. That's a lot of money in the bank for the Conservative Party. But when it comes time to voting, look, you may have signed up with one candidate and decide to switch your vote later on. We don't know. Obviously, Poilievre has the most membership sales. If we, and let's take all their numbers at face value. He says 311,000. Patrick Brown says 150,000. Jean Charest says, won't say how many, just tens of thousands, but that they have the path to victory. What does that mean? Well, they've all got to get, whoever wins has to get the most points. Each riding, each of the 338 ridings across the country is worth 100 points. So, the Brown and Charest camps were trying to say, oh, most of Pierre's sales are in Western Canada. Yeah, he's a bit lopsided in Western Canada, but they still say, well, no, Pierre probably have sold 118,000 memberships in Ontario. Well, that's significant. So, we'll have to see how it plays out. Jenny Byrne, who is, essentially the person running Poilievre's campaign, she was asked straight up in an interview, do you have enough votes to win? Will you have the points to win? She didn't say yes. So she's confident, but she didn't say yes. She said, talked about their strategy and moving forward and going ahead. If they were confident they had it, she probably would have said yes. He is still the front runner, but none of us are going to know because none of us can verify any of these numbers. And between now and when people get the ballots, they might switch to Poilievre from Poilievre, to Charest from Charest, et cetera. Lots of people will be moving around in that time.
What's interesting as well, Brian, on social media, I noticed a lot of Liberal supporters saying they specifically bought memberships not to support Poilievre, but to vote against him. So it'd be interesting to see of the 311,000, how many...
I'd be surprised if there's that many people that did that. That might be more of a social media thing than a reality thing. By the way, once the full list is released by the party to all the candidates, they all have 72 hours to challenge. And so if you see that, Justin Trudeau's chief of staff bought a membership, you can challenge and try and have them thrown out.
Brian, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked by a student about bringing in electoral reform and proportional representation. Now, Trudeau said no, but you didn't really appreciate the way our Prime Minister responded. Can you explain?
Well, he's meeting with students, right? This is the Chilean president is in Ottawa, and this is the type of guy that Trudeau loves to meet with. He's very progressive. He leads a left-wing coalition in Chile that, by the way, includes the Communist Party. But he's young, he's progressive, he's handsome. So Trudeau has to meet with them, and they get their romance going, and they have a town hall with students. Well, it's high school students. They're asking questions. Just answer them nicely. The guy's asking about, will you bring in proportional representation like you promised in 2015? And Trudeau just, no, I don't believe in proportional representation. He's very dramatic in his answer. He's got lots of flair and showing off his Red Sox and all of this. But then he starts talking about how he likes ranked ballots. And he said that way you can vote for the red guy and then the orange girl and then the green guy. And then we never have the blue people running things. Why is he saying that to students? He is acting, it's not a Liberal Party rally. He is acting as the Prime Minister of Canada and being highly partisan with high school students. Dismissive of the kid's question, claims he never supported proportional representation when it was in his 2015 platform, and says he wants ranked ballots. He only wants ranked ballots because Liberals believe that they're everybody's second choice. The MPs on the committee voted to bring in a form of proportional representation. They were able to get together the NDP and the Bloc and the Conservatives to say, yeah, we'll accept this. May not be everything we want, but we'll accept this. And once the committee put forward the report, Trudeau said no. So he was dismissive, he was arrogant, and he showed that he only believes in electoral reform, which we do not need, but he only believes in it if he can rig it so that it helps Liberals win at the end of the day.
Interesting, you said orange girl. When you think orange, it's Jagmeet Singh, so kind of gives you a pause there. Hey, Brian, the Prime Minister is in the United States this week. He toured a NORAD facility in Colorado before heading to Los Angeles for the Summit of the Americas. What's on the agenda there?
If you were to sum it up, it would be a variation of Build Back Better and climate change. The Biden administration is the host, so June 6th to June 10th is the Summit of the Americas. There were some countries that weren't invited, like Venezuela and Cuba. The Mexican president, Almos, he's decided he's not coming, and the Biden administration is getting a lot of pushback saying, you don't really have an agenda going on here. It is kind of weak sauce. It does sound like they're just going to talk about issues like climate change and building back better after the pandemic, but at just a very high level. Normally these things, you've got months and months of officials holding meetings. What can we agree on? Where can we agree? Where are we going to disagree? What can we put in a statement? And this takes months. And so by the time the leaders show up, most things are hammered out already, especially the tricky stuff. So you've either agreed or agreed to disagree or just decided you're not going to talk about certain things. That's what the officials do. The Americans didn't do that. They didn't get it set up. So there's going to be a lot of pomp and circumstance. We'll see how many celebrities Justin Trudeau is meeting with while he's down in LA, because that's what his government has been good about doing before when they've gone to LA, rather than focusing on selling Canada or Canadian business interests.
Canadian military officials, Brian, say that China had 2 of its jets buzz a Canadian plane over international waters. Now, this seems like a highly aggressive move for a country we're not at war with.
Yeah, it was flying Canadian military aircraft flying near North Korea, but definitely inside international airspace. So it was above waters, and they buzzed by it. The Canadian military said that they had to change course to avoid a collision. That is highly aggressive. It's not the first time that this has happened, though. China's been getting more aggressive, especially for any government, any military going into places that it believes is its sphere of influence. So North Korea, they would consider that their sphere of influence. The Straits of Taiwan, where we've sent naval ships in the past, they would consider that. In fact, they buzzed some of our naval ships in 2019 in similar moves. So yeah, it is aggressive from China. It is belligerent from China. Not unexpected, unfortunately, though.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Well, the University of Lethbridge has received a $100,000 grant from the Canadian Space Agency to train the next generation of space scientists. The U of L is one of 21 post-secondary institutions in the country to receive a grant through the CSA's Flights and Fieldwork for the Advancement of Science and Technology Funding Initiative. It's a mouthful, but joining me now to discuss this is Dr. David Naylor. He is the physics and astronomy professor and the head of the Astronomical Instrumentation Group at the University of Lethbridge. Dr. Naylor, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Okay, awesome. So, Dr. Naylor, this is big, exciting news for the university and for Canada, I would say, but I'm going to let you explain what this grant is for exactly, because it's kind of a mouthful. So in a nutshell, it's to train the next generation of space scientists in the development of what, a cryogenic something?
Yes. So, most of your viewers may know that Canada is going to be going to the moon on a project called the Lunar Gateway. And the Canadian Space Agency has joined forces with NASA to on this project that will see a Canadian be the second nation on the boots on the ground on the moon. So someone in school today will be a Canadian who will have be only the second nation to step foot on the moon, which is really exciting. And so the Canadian Space Agency funds development in technology so that you mitigate the risk. So things that space is risk. That's all it is as a, and you have to mitigate that. And you need to train the next generation of students who become scientists in the technology that will be needed for the future generations. So that's what this is all about. And we're particularly targeting technology that has a path to the moon and some other experiments that we're dealing with as well.
That's incredible news. It's very exciting. And so what will this grant money do exactly? What will the U of L do with it?
So when you do research, there are 2 things you look at. One is getting the equipment, the infrastructure, the hardware. And the second is the money to train students. And so we've been given funding from different grants for equipment. We have 4 industrial partners that are contributing upwards of $2 million. And this piece of the puzzle is for training of students. So these students will be high school students, possibly. We have had some in the past, undergraduate students, graduate students, and so forth. So we're training the next generation of bright minds on the technology that will be required to tackle the problems that will be coming down the pipes in the coming years.
That's amazing. So maybe paint a picture for me. So what will the students and researchers be able to do because of this grant and this program?
So most people don't realize that the moon in some ways is actually harder than Mars as an environment. Mars is really about a temperature of minus 50 degrees, minus 60 degrees Celsius. So Antarctica is actually colder than Mars, but the moon gets significantly colder around 200 Celsius, minus 200 Celsius. And that is because of its orbit, and it's sheltered. The night on the moon is 14 Earth days. So it means that a surviving lunar night is a real challenge, and you have to have instrumentation that's checked out to do that. And we have the largest cryogenic test facility, which is kind of like an enormous beer fridge. I mean, it gets much colder, much faster, but it cools to temperatures that nowhere else can be achieved really for the volume that we have. So we can in principle cool a small rover, a medium rover, and a nano rover in our cryogenic facilities. So students will be exposed to the technology that is associated with this kind of work. Basically, when you put things, if you get a glass of pop and put an ice cube in it, it cracks, it shatters. That thermal gradient just causes the ice cube to crack when you have a pop from the fridge. And pretty much everything you cool to these temperatures breaks. The optical, thermal, electrical, mechanical properties, everything, the properties of everything just fail as you get to extremely low temperatures. And so you must be able to design systems that will survive extreme cooling. And that's what we're doing.
Interesting.
The CSA calls it the Flight Sim Fieldwork for Space Technology, but the acronym is FAST. It's a very nice acronym. It's basically you have to simulate a space environment. And we're one of the few labs in Canada that can really do that.
This project must simulate a realistic space environment. So what does that look like in terms of what the students will be doing in the lab at the U of L? Can you maybe give us some examples?
It looks like a big metal tank. You can imagine it as a submarine. When you go in a submarine, it takes some time to get down to the bottom of the ocean. And you can stay there for a long time, but you must be careful when you ascend. You can't come up too quickly or you will get the bends. And it's similar in the sense that when you cool down, like the ice cube in the glass of pop, if you cool down too quickly, the ice cube will shatter. And so we have got to go down to extremely low temperatures, and we can stay there pretty much indefinitely, which is just surprising. And we can get 10 times colder than anywhere in the universe can be. With our cryostat, we can actually get down to 0.3 Kelvin. So it takes a long time to get down there, but then we can stay there. And our record is almost a couple of months staying at that low temperature. And the problem, like a submarine, if you forget to take your toothpaste, then you're stuck because you've got to wait till you come up. So when we cool things, we've got to be absolutely sure that we have everything in the cryostat that we will need as we go down. So it's meticulous work, it's careful work, and we're pretty good at what we do here. So we're training the next generation of students in this technology.
Okay, so Dr. Naylor, is this cryogenic tank actually physically at the University of Lethbridge then, or is it off-site somewhere?
No. It's on the top level of the new science building. So we have to be on the top level because we need a lot of compressors to cool it. So they're in the penthouse. And so we're on level 9 in the science building, and it was designed fit for purpose. So this is the first time we've had a lab that's been equipped specifically for this task.
That's absolutely incredible. So this new type of spectrometer has been identified by the world's leading space agencies like NASA, right, as a necessary step to explore the galaxy. Can you explain why?
It gets tricky pretty quickly, but we now know the. So when you explore the universe, you look at different wavelengths, different colors. So with your eye, you can see the planets out there tonight, but it turns out that most of the energy emitted by the universe is detected in the infrared. That's beyond the limit of human vision. And so you need certain types of detectors and certain types of instrumentation. And the physics is complex, but it boils down to the fact that you have to cool your detectors to extremely low temperatures to work. And then you've got competing contrasting requirements. You would like to cover a full spectral band, a broad spectral band. So if you were thinking about the rainbow of colors, you've got green through to yellow through to red, you've got the whole rainbow. And at the same time, you might want to know, well, is it, lemon yellow, or is it a bolder yellow within the color range? And so the task is to cover a broad spectral range at very high spectral resolution. And that's a challenge. And so the space agencies have realized that this hybrid technology is going to be required. And NASA has identified this, the European Space Agency, with whom we do a lot of work as well. They know that this is the route to go. And so it's on the technology gap. Every year, NASA publishes a technology gap review. Where are we missing in technology? And then the world scientists like ourselves try to fill in those gaps as best we can. So yeah, I think we know Einstein said the smartest person is the one who poses the right question, not whether you can answer it. The right question is that we need this type of instrument, and now we're trying to develop the instrument, which is well on the path, and we need to train the next generation of students in how to use it, really.
Okay, so we've pretty much determined that this is an important step in the future of space exploration. So could something like this reduce future mission risk and cost then?
Well, yes. I mean, space is all about risk. I mean, you don't get into this game if you're risk averse. So you have to make sure you've got redundancy, full redundancy. So whenever we launch anything, you make sure that there are ways that you can reprogram it. You basically carry two of everything: 2 lasers, 2 detectors, two drives, two whatever it is. You have redundancy, and then you also have a redundancy in your hardware, your firmware, and so you can reprogram and reconfigure the spacecraft should there be problems. And so what you don't want to do, and I've been involved in space for 4 decades. I worked at the European Space Agency. What you don't want to do is to launch something and then find out, oh, it doesn't work, and here's why. And we've been in those positions. And so you do as much testing, soaking as you can, and you try. And now the requirement is you must test in a realistic space condition, and that's the new space driver, that you must be able to show that you can evaluate the performance of your instrument in the conditions that it's going to experience once it gets out there. And that is what we do. So we can generate. We've got one of the most realistic space simulators in Canada because of the low temperature side. Many people can generate a high vacuum, but we have high vacuum and extremely low temperatures, and that's precisely what is going to be needed to reduce the risk. So we need to identify problems on the ground where we have a chance of fixing them and redesigning them before we launch a $10 billion thing, and then we find out, oh yeah, we should have thought about that.
So Dr. Naylor, has the University of Lethbridge taken part in any such study or project before? Like, maybe you can explain in what ways the U of L has shaped space exploration in the past, or is this a first for the university?
The University of Lethbridge, our group's been funded by the Canadian Space Agency for almost 20 years. We've been funded by ESA as well, and also NASA, actually. We have an instrument that flew on a U-2 aircraft, Earth EO2 aircraft. So we're pretty old hands at this. And we built up the technology over, as I say, over several decades to become really the leading cryogenic space facility in Canada.
That's amazing. Has Canada had much involvement in influencing space exploration?
That's yes and no. We're a small country, really, and so the tax base is small. So our space agency does not get the kind of funding that NASA does, for sure. Europe, the countries in Europe joined together to form the European Space Agency, and you have, I forget the number, but it's probably 15 countries, maybe more, and they each chip in, and then they do big things. Japan does it on its own. Russia did it on its own. China does it on its own. So Canada can't do it on its own. We just don't have the resources to do it. But there are a lot of really talented scientists and engineers in Canada. And what happens is that NASA and ESA invite us to join their teams. So Canada gets involved in space because of the expertise and excellence that exists in the professors in universities across Canada. And it's interesting because we have ties with Europe and America, we actually get involved with both agencies. I've worked with NASA and with ESA, and sometimes NASA and ESA don't work well together, but we're in a kind of a neat position that we can join forces with both, and we get invited to. So we've been invited to participate in the mission that is being considered by NASA.
That is extremely, extremely cool. How much time do you think it will be before a Canadian steps foot on the moon?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. Canada joined into the Lunar Gateway project, so Prime Minister Trudeau committed $2 billion to that effort, and in return for supporting that work, Canada gets a flight to the moon for a Canadian. So the second nationality to step foot on the moon will not be Russian or Chinese. Well, I mean, perhaps it could be, but it is going to be a Canadian after Americans, which is really kind of exciting. We don't actually know yet. The Artemis project is going to go back, and they're thinking probably 2025. And when the Canadian will be there, it's not clear. There will be a launch slot and a seat on the spacecraft, but it really will be a big thing for Canada.
Oh, it's giving me chills just thinking about it. Dr. Naylor, thanks so much for joining me today, and all the best in this study.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Absolutely. Dr. David Naylor is a physics and astronomy professor and head of the Astronomical Instrumentation Group at the University of Lethbridge. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.